Good evening, everyone. I am super stoked to be here. You guys read my bio. My name is Radlin Mendoza, but I'm going to talk a little bit about myself because I'm an attorney and lawyers love talking about themselves. You guys know that, right? Sorry to my fellow attorneys, but we do have kind of a big ego. All right. My name is Radlin Mendoza, as I said, and my husband and I founded our law firm in 2000, and our law firm is located in Virginia Beach. And I've been an immigration attorney for 20 years. I can't believe time flies when you're having fun. And we've done thousands of immigration cases, and fiancé visa cases are one of our main areas of practice. So I'm super stoked to be here because I've never done a webinar before, and people are actually here, and none of them are my mom or any of my family members. So that's totally cool. Thank you, guys. And I also love doing fiancé visa cases as well as marriage visa cases because I get to meet the couple when they're like right in that in love stage. And my divorce lawyer friends next door to my office, they're totally jealous of me. I get to read love letters, and they get to read like hate mail and toxic text. So the reason I'm doing this webinar today is I know that a lot of people self-file, and unfortunately we get a lot of self-filers who come in here where their cases have gotten derailed. And so I want to share with you some of our tips when we file fiancé visas, and I also want to answer some of your questions. I want to leave time for that. So one of the examples that I've seen is when a client goes to the local USCIS office is one example, and it's happened a couple of times. And he explains to the immigration officer that, you know, what he wants to do, he wants to file a fiancé visa, and the client was given the wrong version of the I-129F, which of course is the form that you start this process with, the I-129F form, I-129F from the USCIS.gov website. So what happened when he was given that incorrect version? He completed it, he submitted his money, he submitted his evidence, but it got sent back to him 3 months later. And even though he had the fees, they didn't charge him for it. He wasted all that time. So that was a big disappointment to the client that his case got derailed for about 3 months. And I know how you guys are, clients, when you're ready to do something and you make the decision, okay, I'm gonna do this fiancé visa, you want it done yesterday. So again, it was a pretty, even though it was a 3-month delay, it was a pretty big delay for that couple. Another example is if my client is not savvy with the technology. Now, you guys who are here, obviously you're on the webinar, so you are savvy on technology, but there are actually clients out there who don't have email, and everything now is done electronically. Everything is you know, emailed and communicated to you through email. And once this client's I-129F was filed and approved, he couldn't do the next steps because he was getting notified through email. And then the validity of his I-129F approval expired, and they're totally freaking out. We fixed it, you know, but again, we had to step in and take care of that issue. There are many such examples, as I'm sure you guys know, but those are just a couple. So just an overview of what I'm going to talk about in this webinar, and hopefully you guys can all hear me okay. Let me see here. Everybody can hear me okay? If you guys can give a thumbs up. I think you can give a thumbs up here. All right. Okay, great. So what I'm going to talk about. So number one, I'm going to talk about the requirements for filing the I-129F, okay? Number two, I'm going to do a quick overview of what I consider to be steps 2 and 3 after that fiancé visa petition is approved. So there is quite a bit more to just getting the fiancé visa approved. And then the third thing, I want to answer your questions. So if you have questions, I don't mind if you type them in now. I'm going to be kind of taking a look at the chat box. And if your question relates to what I'm saying, I'll go ahead and answer it right then and there, but I will most likely hold all the questions till the end. All right. But if you have questions, just kind of blurt them out. Well, not blurt them out because you guys are all muted, but type them in the chat. So when I talk about this, the requirements for the filing of the I-129F, I'm going to do a hypothetical couple. So John, he's a U.S. citizen. That's the name of my husband. I've changed some of the facts here. John, U.S. citizen. He's 51 years old from Ohio. His fiancee, Radlin, is 36 years old, and she's from Quezon City, Philippines. They met on Facebook through mutual friends. They've been talking through Messenger since May of 2015. John is divorced, and Radlin has never been married. So over this past Christmas, John got over his fear of flying, and after all of these years of talking on Messenger, he went to the Philippines to meet Radlin in person and all of her family members. So when they met, this meeting sealed the deal. They had an amazing 10 days together in the Philippines, and they knew that they wanted to get married. So to recap, John, he's a divorced U.S. citizen, and in a fiancé visa case, he's going to be the petitioner. Radlin, she's the Filipina fiancé, the foreign national. She is the beneficiary in this case. And they recently met each other on a trip to the Philippines in December. All right, so basic requirements of the I-129F. Am I going too fast, y'all, or am I good? A-okay? All right, slow me down if I'm going too quickly. But you guys are on Zoom, so I know you're sharp. All right, number one, John has to be a U.S. citizen at the time of filing. As you know, he's from Ohio, so we're good to go with that. If John was about to become a U.S. citizen, a naturalized citizen, he'd actually have to wait until that process was done after his actual swearing oath ceremony in order to file this petition. So he's good to go as a person who was born in the United States citizen, but you've got to have your naturalization certificate in hand before you can actually file the fiancé visa, okay? Number two, both John and Radlin must be legally able to marry. So mention that John is divorced. John needs his divorce decree, and that divorce decree has to be final, okay? So if you only have a separation agreement, unfortunately, you're gonna have to wait until that divorce is final. I'm not gonna get into annulments, but again, same concept. The annulment has to be final, and both parties have to be legally able to marry. The third basic requirement is you have to have met your fiancé within 2 years of filing the fiancé visa petition. And finally, the fourth, you have to have the intent to get married within 90 days of entering the United States after this visa has been approved and issued to you. Okay, so with all of these requirements, you have to prove it. So we can't just say that John is a US citizen. We need a piece of paper to prove that. So with that petition, John's gonna have to submit a copy of his US passport or a copy of his birth certificate showing that he was born in Ohio. We also need his divorce decree. And then we need proof of that trip to the Philippines. So when you go on the trip to go see your fiance, and if that is the only trip that you intend to take, then you need to take pictures together. Radlin and John have to take pictures. They should save the receipts of the resorts they may have visited. If they did any intra-country traveling, then save the airline tickets and the boarding passes. we've got to show that that meeting actually happened. And so if you guys send me your email, and I believe I have your email through Zoom, then I will send you our document with suggestions on what to include to show the relationship and that you guys have met each other within the requisite time period. So let's talk about this for a minute. I've had clients in the past, and I don't think this is going to be a problem in this day and age of people taking tons of selfies, but you got to have photos. Okay, so take a lot of pictures wherever you go and whatever it is that you're doing. I had a client years ago who says that he went to Pakistan to see his fiancee, but he had no pictures. Said, we need pictures. So he's like, okay, I'll get some pictures for you. So he produced these horrible photos for me, and it was back in the day, so photoshopping was definitely not on point like it is today, and they were just horrible. Basically, it was his head on his future mother-in-law's shoulders, and so obvious that they had been doctored. So I said, look, you need to go back to Pakistan and get the photo. So I mean, I believe that he went, but the boarding passes are not enough. You've got to show that you actually met in person. There are exceptions to this rule, but I'm not going to get into that today. If you fall under that, shoot me an email and we can talk about that a little bit. Okay, so the other thing that you have to provide is letters of intent to get married. So don't overthink this. It's basically a letter that states, I am legally able to get married and I intend to marry John within 90 days of my entry. And then the beneficiary, the foreign national, also needs one of those two. So in addition to these basic documents to meet the requirements, you also need passport photos of you. So these are the 2x2 passport photos with a color background taken within 30 days of filing. We need the beneficiary's birth certificate. That would be Radlin's birth certificate. If your fiance is coming from a country where the birth certificate is not in English, then that has to be translated. So of course, in the case of a Philippines birth certificate, that will be in English. But every document that you submit has to be translated. And of course, the filing fee of $535 made out to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. So does anyone have any, okay, we got some questions here. So digital copies of the items. We send digital photos, yes. And we cut them to make them the right size. It's kind of a pain to do that, but, oh, plane tickets and photos, absolutely. So the question here, I'm so sorry guys, I'm reading it and not actually reading the question out loud because this is my first webinar, so thank you so much for your patience. You should submit copies of everything and not originals. Was that the question? So the questions are digital copies of the items okay? Is that the question? Okay, awesome, yes. For sure, submit copies. Definitely don't submit original documents. Okay, I'm gonna try to put my, so basically what's happening here, I don't wanna see my face while I'm talking because it distracts me. Who wants to see your face while you're talking, right? All right. Okay, so here's another question. When the documents are to be translated, do we have to do that at US Embassy? Great question. I get this question a lot. Do they have to be like, have that special stamp and the red ribbon and all that fancy stuff? No, they just have to be a certified translation. So what that means is the person translating it can certify and state that he or she is proficient in both English and let's just say it's Spanish to translate that document. So it's really, really straightforward, the certification. So they don't have to be done at the US Embassy. Okay. All right. So here are my tips, and these might seem pretty basic and fundamental, but they're tips that we actually use every day here at the law firm, so we don't make mistakes. So, I mean, I don't do this one just because we do them so often, but for the self-filers, use the USCIS website. That website is definitely your friend. Go to uscis.gov. Let me just type that. You guys have been there, I'm sure, but it's uscis.gov. And under forms, scroll down to the I-129F. And if you're self-filing, you read the instructions. It is 14 pages. So just use that as a checklist, check off as you go. And they also have a couple of other optional checklists that are good. Use those. Don't be afraid of them. Go to the uscis.gov website. The second tip is what I've seen is, don't buy your forms on some scammy website. The forms are always free on uscis.gov. Okay, that's my public service announcement for the day. Don't buy your forms, they're free. Number 3, and this is kind of Mr. Adrian to me, but make a copy of your application before sending it out. It's very common. Like if I'm trying to see what someone has done, if I take the case on later after they've self-filed and they say, oh, I didn't make a copy of that. That always really surprises me. So make a copy of that, please, for your records and if you need it later down the road. Number 4, and this is super important, send this with some trackable mail. Send it through USPS and have it tracked. Or so you have to use a service that goes to a PO box or actually use a physical address. So you can use Federal Express, but please don't be cheap and just toss this in the mail with a couple of stamps on it. Use some sort of trackable mail. So not just the Postal Service with a couple of stamps, but tracking, Priority Express or Express Mail. We do that here. We always make sure that we can track the package. So this is a little bit more work for you guys, but it may help you organize things, but do a cover letter with everything that you submit. So you actually know that you submitted it. It's not mandatory, but it is gonna help you organize things. So for example, if you submit your package and then Immigration Service says, hey, you need to submit the passport photos. Well, in your cover letter, you will see that you've submitted it. My advice would be just to submit again, but at least you will know that you actually submitted and that you're not going crazy. So I guess that could be another one of my tips. If you get a request for evidence, asking for documentation that you know that you submitted, you've got copies of it that you submitted, you got the photos, but they're still asking you for the photos, just submit the document again. It will save you so much time and energy. And I swear I get clients, they're like, I was on the 1-800 number like 17 times because they said I didn't submit my, fiance's birth certificate, but I did, and they don't believe me. Like, okay, I'll take your case over, and what we do is we just comply with the request. So just make it easy on yourself and don't get too principled. It's like, well, I already submitted that, just do it. The 6th tip that I have is double check the version of your form. So don't be like my client and submit a form that has expired, even though he got that from the local immigration office. I mean, people make mistakes. They made a mistake and they gave him the wrong form. Number 7, double check your filing fee. So go to the USCIS website and go onto the I-129 and see how much that actually cost at the time that you file it. Currently, it's $535, and I would recommend that you send a personal check. Of course, you've got to have money in your account to let that check bounce. But the reason for that is so you can track it. It's a little bit harder to track a money order. So what we do sometimes when we submit, and this happened, guys, I mean, it happens to attorneys, it happens to people who don't have attorneys, but we'll submit something like, we didn't get the receipt back. What happened to this? It was delivered to USCIS. We could see with our USPS tracking, but then we can go and look and have our client look on their check to see if the check cleared. And usually on the back of that check, there's going to be a receipt number, so it'll be easier to track. So that's why I recommend using a personal check. And then finally, the tip is to double check where you should mail the application in. I can't believe it's already been 23 minutes, so I'm gonna have to speed up a little bit, because when I was preparing this, I looked up and I had 6 pages of notes. So I'm gonna try to blow through this a little bit faster. All right, here's my pro tip. Okay, these are all pro tips, but this one is the pro tip. It's like, you gotta begin with the end in mind, all right? You gotta try to think ahead to this whole process. It's not just, all right, I gotta file these forms, I gotta fulfill this part of the petition. It's a really long process, and you gotta kind of think ahead. You know there's gonna be an interview. You know the end goal is for your fiance to be living with you in the United States. Think about all that. You know that it's gonna take a long time. You know what the processing times are. So one of the pieces of advice I give is don't make wedding plans. I've seen so many people whose wedding plans have just been crushed and money lost because, okay, they actually thought, or somebody said, you're gonna get your fiancé visa in 90 days, you know, because of the whole 90-day fiancé thing. And people actually think it's gonna take 90 days, and that's just absurd. So don't make wedding plans. Again, with the beginning, with the end in mind. Ask your fiancé before filing whether they have a criminal record. I know that's totally awkward, but I mean, are you going to be married to this person until death do us part? It's better to find out now. And it could really impact how that case goes and other, you know, different things that you might be able to do. Has your fiancé, has the beneficiary ever been denied a visa? And if they have, why? Why did you get denied a visa? Those are things that they're not going to come out in the very first part when you file that application with USCIS. They're going to come out, that information is going to come out later. So these are things that you need to ask. Again, really important. Do either of you have a criminal record history? And we're not going to get too deep into the woods with this because I'm already not even, you know, halfway through, but that could really be a problem. So if you have those special considerations, definitely reach out to me. Another thing is, you know, what is the travel going to be like? Is the fiance who lives abroad the foreign national? Are they planning on coming to the United States before, after, or during this process? And if they come before, or if they come during or after, what is the fiance going to tell the person at the airport who's inspecting? What are they going to tell the port of entry officer at the airport? Another thing to think about is, did you claim enough money on your tax return to be the only financial sponsor on the affidavit of support down the road? Or are you going to need a joint sponsor? So these are all things that, you know, you kind of have to look at, because when you look at the I-129F form, the instructions, requirements, you know, it's not looking down the road to the green card. And we all know that's where that is leading. So one thing that we've seen here too many times is when you've got the foreign national coming to visit, as I talked about just a second ago, the travel. So for example, we had a client who was coming to visit her boyfriend, and client was coming from Japan. So, you know, you're talking about like a 16-hour, 18-hour trip. And so she comes into Dulles, and the officer said, what are you doing here? I'm coming to visit my boyfriend. And she had been coming in and out, and so it was no big deal. And the officer just kind of pressed a little bit with more questions, like, your boyfriend, okay, what's his name? Give his name, what's his phone number? Okay, so they said, okay, so it's your boyfriend, right? And she says, yes. And so the officer calls the boyfriend and talks to the boyfriend a little bit, and the boyfriend calls the foreign national who's trying to come into the United States from Japan, calls her his fiancée. So there we have a misrepresentation, right? It's a material misrepresentation, and they sent her back. Like, she had to just turn right around and get back on a plane back to Japan, and they were devastated. And so that misrepresentation caused major delays in the case. And it could have been a lot worse than it was, but it was probably about a 10 to 12 month delay in their plans to be together. And they were just devastated. So just think about stuff like that, because it's so important if you're traveling to be truthful and I don't want to say get your story straight, but to know that you have to be honest and tell the truth. And if it's in the reason that people don't tell the truth is because, oh, they're not going to let me in. Well, if you tell the truth and you have an explanation and you have a plan for leaving the US, then they will. So that's definitely something to think about as far as what is the travel situation going to be like during all of this. All right, so that story ended well. Couple, they have a baby now and they're great, but trust me, when we were all going through that, it was gut wrenching. It totally was. So really quickly, let's talk about processing times. We're looking at 6 to 8 months right now of when you file that Fiancee Visa petition, the I-129F, to when it actually gets approved by USCIS. And when I'm talking about USCIS, I'm talking about the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. Hopefully you all know that. But that's just the approval here in the US of that I-129F petition. So it could take a little bit longer if you get a request for evidence. So you're looking at 6 to 8 months. And then once it's approved, it usually takes about 3 to 4 weeks to transfer to the embassy abroad. In the hypothetical case of Razan and John, that would go to the US Embassy in Manila. All right, so that is what we talk about and all the steps to just get the approval of the I-129F. Are we done? Are we done? No, your fiance is still in the Philippines or in the UK or in Turkey, and there's so much other stuff to do. The title of the webinar is to file the I-129F or file the Fiancee Visa petition the right way, and we just went through that, but there's just so much more. And I'm going to kind of, again, because I really want to get to your questions, blow through steps 2 and 3 of this process. I'm just checking over here to see if we have any questions. Okay, hold on one second, guys. Bear with me. Do we submit passport photos of the petitioner or the beneficiary? Yes, you have to do one of each, one photo of each of you. And then what is the average processing time? It's 6 to 8 months right now, and that could change. Hopefully it's short, it changes for the better, but it also could get longer. And again, factoring the couple 2 to 3 to 4 weeks time to get that case transferred from USCIS to the embassy, okay? All right. So what I consider to be steps 2 and 3, quick overview. Step 2, you got to create an account and complete the State Department Form DS-160. And then you have to also complete the affidavit of support, and this is going to be the Form I-134, and you got to get that to your fiance to submit at the interview. So the fiance is going to schedule, or it's going to be scheduled for him or her for the medical exam and the interview, okay? And so usually the medical is going to be done a day or 2 before the actual interview. So your fiance is also going to need police certificates from any place she's lived for more than 6 months. If at the time that she was 16 or older, he or she. And then of course, the fiance appears at the interview. And at that time, again, don't forget about the Form I-134, because if you don't have it, then if she doesn't have it or if he doesn't have it, it's going to be a delay. And then I always have my clients bring updated documents of the bona fide relationship if you have them, the things that may have transpired since you filed the I-129F. Okay, so for the interview, I think the interview is so important. Such an important part of the process. Obviously, this is an in-person interview. It's quick. unless it's not quick and there's a problem. But I always prepare my clients for the fiancé visa really, really, really well, just in case. And so you got to be able to answer questions. So for example, in the Radlin and John example, Radlin might be asked whether John has ever been married before. You know, he has. What is the name of the former spouse? Does he have any kids? If so, what are their names? Where and when did they meet? When do they plan on getting married? That's a big one. So when I interview prep my clients, they're like, I don't know. So you have to have some sort of plan, even if it's not something that's set in stone, and it definitely has to involve getting married within 90 days of coming into the United States. So, you know, have something, talk about it. Don't have the foreign nationals say, oh, that's up to her. Have a plan, even if it's not set in stone. Where are you going to be living? What's the address? What is your fiance's address? Where does he work? What does he do? What's his cell phone number? Nobody knows cell phone numbers anymore. I always have my clients know the cell phone number, okay? All right, so let's just assume that the visa is approved. It's gonna be mailed to your fiance, or they can pick it up at a designated location. And that visa is good for 6 months from the date of the medical. So here I am really quickly, step 3, welcome to America, right? Fiance comes in, everybody knows this. Here's where the 90-day fiance comes in. You gotta get married within 90 days, okay? And then after that, you've gotta prepare and file the green card application, the form I-45. Definitely file the work authorization document with that, which is the I-765 form. The advanced parole document should be filed with that, and that's permission for your fiance to travel abroad while this process is pending. And then the affidavit of support. But it's a different affidavit of support because they like to kind of mix it up a little bit. It's the I-864. That's the form that you have to file for the affidavit of support. Currently, the filing fees are $12.25. And so this is a lot. It's quite a bit more preparation and documentation than just the I-129F, and it requires obviously supporting documentation as well. So what are the processing times for the green card? Once your fiance gets here and you guys get married, and then you file the I-485, which is the green card application, and all the other stuff that I told you to file with it. It's 10.5 to 22 months. So it's quite a long time. I say it takes forever. It's not forever. It's 10.5 to 22 months, which it is still pretty long. And those time frames have just gotten longer and longer. So the only saving grace is that your fiance will get the work permit and the permission to travel abroad within about 5 to 6 months. And so your fiance will be able to work and travel once they get that document in hand. It's still a long time. I mean, one thing to be prepared for is that your fiance is going to be just hating life and totally bored if you're working and he or she is not. So something to think about. Okay, so what is the form number for the permission to travel abroad, or is that part of the work authorization? So the form number for the permission to travel abroad is the I-131, and the work permit is the I-765. Okay. Forgot you guys could also see all the questions, so I guess I don't have to read them. All right. After you follow that and all the months pass, there will be another interview, most likely. Again, be prepared for that interview. The interview would be with both of you. If you're here in the local area, then the interview would be in Norfolk, Virginia. And if you're in the DC area, it might be in Fairfax. It probably will be in Fairfax. So there are local immigration offices all over the country to be able to interview you for this process. So again, save your documents. Be prepared for this interview. I just had one this morning. Open up a bank account together if you can. Utility bills, joint lease, car, health insurance, all that stuff is going to be really useful. You're going to have 10.5 to 22 months to build a file to have these documents to present at the interview. Okay, so once approved, your spouse is going to get the 2-year green card. It's the conditional resident card. All right, so we've talked about from preparing and filing the I-129F all the way to when your fiance is here, you guys get married, then it's your spouse, and then you file the green card application, and now you go to the interview down the road, and then your spouse gets the 2-year card. Let's look into the future really quickly. Again, it's the 2-year card, okay? So in the 90-day period before that card expires, you and your spouse are gonna have to file the form I-751 to remove the conditions on that card. So again, you got almost 2 years from the time that you get that card. My pro tip, get a folder, all the stuff that you guys have, bills, health insurance cards, car insurance, your taxes that you file together, all the beautiful babies that you have, put it all into that folder. So when it's time to file the renewal, the petition to remove the conditions on that green card, you're going to be ready. You're going to be good to go. You're not going to be scrambling around for documents. Okay. And then finally, U.S. citizenship. If your spouse wants to apply for citizenship, if you guys are married and living together, then your spouse can file that 2 years and 9 months after getting that first 2-year card. So, whew, that was a lot. Do you guys have any questions? And I'm going to open it up for questions, but there's a lot going on there. So, any questions? Okay. I was supposed to have created some questions in case you guys didn't have any questions, but I didn't. I do have a question though. I do have something that comes up a lot, frequently asked question. Okay, go ahead. Yay, I don't have to make up the question. Okay, while you're typing it out, one of the questions is, can my fiance travel to the United States while this process is pending? Did anyone wonder about that? Okay, I know you guys aren't wondering about it now if you haven't filed, but that is a question that we get a lot. And if you search the interwebs, there's all kinds of answers out there. I always tell my clients that as long as they have a plan and they're able to explain that plan to the port of entry officers, and you say, look, stand in front of the officer, right? I'm here to visit my fiance for 60 days. Here's my return ticket. Here's what we're gonna do. Yes, I do realize I have a fiancee visa petition pending, and I know that I have to go back for that interview and take care of business with that. I have no intention of remaining here. Why would I have filed that if I guess you don't have to ask a rhetorical question. That would be bad. But you get my point. So have a plan, have a return ticket. What are you doing? My clients do it all the time while the process is pending, and it's okay as long as you're able to actually explain why and what you're doing. And we always give our clients a back pocket letter as well, just in case they have to take it out. And I'm representing so-and-so, and I've explained to them that they're going to have an interview, and they know that they have to go back. So you can do that as well, and just be prepared to answer that question. Okay, so a couple of questions here. During the period of time where the beneficiary is waiting for the authorization to work, would he be legally able to work for a company from his home country that allows him to telecommute? Yes, we have that that come up quite a bit. And so the answer is yes to that. There are special considerations as far as taxes are concerned. And so that would be my only caveat, is to just check with a CPA about whether taxes would have to be filed, but that happens quite a bit. Okay, next question is, could you please let me know if my wife at that point after application can travel out of the country, or does she need a visa form for that? Okay, so let me see if I understand this question. Is this question about traveling out of the country? Is it about after the petition is filed, or and presuming she has no other? Are we saying that she has no other type of visa? Like she doesn't have currently have a B1, B2, or is be able to travel through ESTA? Is that correct? Okay, so I'm going to just assume that she does not. She's currently working with an OP. So is she in the United States then? I mean, I'm assuming she's in the, okay. So did you guys do the fiancé visa process? Okay. So I'm thinking this is a marriage adjustment case, right? If this is a marriage adjustment case, say you guys met while she was here on a student visa and she's currently in the United States with OPT, is that, and then you filed the I-130 petition, the green card application, work authorization, and advanced parole. Is that what you did? Plan on doing that. Okay. So the question is, and this is a little bit different, but kind of somewhat related, because this person is going to do step 3 because his spouse is here in the U.S., lawfully here in the U.S., and entered with a student visa. So once the advanced parole is issued, then your wife would be able to leave the U.S. and come back in on that advanced parole. I hope that answers your question. Let me know if it doesn't. Okay. She can work as long as she has the work authorization document. Yes. Can she still work? Okay. Another question is, I haven't seen Fiancé since May 2017. Do I have to visit her again before I plan on filing in July? Yes, you do. Yes. So John, you have to see her again because it has to be within the 2 years. You have to have seen her within the 2 years. Unless, what date is it today? It's almost the end of the month. If you saw her at the very end of the month, there's still actually time to file it. So. Okay. So here's a question. After the fiance arrives in the US and gets married, is it then the same process as an adjustment of status? Yes, it is. But it's a little bit different because there's no I-130 petition. Okay, another question is, so what if the petitioner and beneficiary weren't smart and have booked a wedding for September 19, 2020? When would be the smartest time to file? Let's see, it's May, June, July, August. Oh, that's tight. Yeah, ASAP or different strategy. So this is the, I mean, don't say you weren't smart. You just didn't know. Don't say that you weren't smart. So he still may not be here in time for that. Now, I actually have had people who had that, did the wedding and everything, but they actually didn't get married. They just had the celebration because of the fiancé visa process. So, yeah, where is fiancé from? Okay. Definitely tomorrow, you should, very soon. That's really tight. I mean, I can't say that's going to actually happen. I'm sorry, but feel free to reach out to me. Okay. Let me put my email address. Yeah. It is poop. If you guys, let me go back to another question here. Okay, so can she still work then, but on an expired working visa? Well, I would say it's not expired working visa, because if you file the green card application with the I-765, I would say that she would have to wait until that gets approved before lawfully working in the US. Okay, does that make sense to the person who's asking about his wife on OPT? Okay, so, okay, awesome. It makes sense, fantastic. Do you guys have any other questions? Again, save your documents. Try to document as well as you can. And again, I think that, I don't know what the age demographic of this group is, but sort of the older clients don't really document stuff, and they're very old school. They say, oh, I didn't put her on the bank account. I just give her money whenever she wants. No, I didn't put her on any bills, or she doesn't have a debit card. There's no documentation, and it just makes my job really hard. And it's not about me, obviously. We want the case to get approved, and I want to get it approved with as little friction as possible for my clients. But when I present that in an interview, no documents whatsoever. We have to go to affidavits. We have to go to photos and things like that, which is fine. But if it's not a seasoned officer who's reading the couple and reading the clients and reading the situation, and the officer's going strictly by documents, which is very common, then that's going to be super difficult and hard. So just try to make a record for yourself. I know it might seem like, oh gosh, I'm just documenting this marriage for immigration. Yes, you are. You're not. It's not. Doesn't make it a fake marriage and a fake relationship, but you do have to save this documentation. Okay. So let's see. Question is, when I go to visit her again this summer, when we find a place to translate their documents, is it best to go to a document translator through their government or private business? What's the country? Thailand. I wouldn't say government, and I don't even know about private business, to tell you the truth. What I would do, I would get the documents translated in the United States, which is totally fine. So I've seen some pretty terrible translations out of some countries where you think it's a solid translation, but it's not. It's wrong for whatever reason. And it's fine to translate them here. I know it's cheaper. It would be maybe cheaper to do it in Thailand, but I would take the documents here and get them translated. And if you need that information, shoot me an email. Yes, yep, definitely. So, question, my fiance has a lot of money in savings. Can she use that instead of or in addition to me writing an affidavit of support? So the affidavit of it really depends. For the affidavit of support that you initially file with the I-134, I'm sorry, with the fiancé visa, which is the I-134, then no, you have to show your own income from that. And so with the I-134, if you guys, I'll type it in here. If you guys take a look at the I-864P, oops, which is basically the income requirements for when you're petitioning for someone, then you can see if you actually qualify, and what you have to include with the I-134 is your most recent tax return. And I always also include the W-2 and the most recent pay stub. So if you take a look at the I-864P and you think, oh gosh, I don't have enough, then you may have someone submit an I-134 on her behalf, another person. So the savings can come in handy for when she ultimately immigrates to the United States. I'm sorry, not immigrates, comes to the United States on the non-immigrant fiancé visa. And then you guys file the green card application. And with the I-864, that is when you would be able to use her savings. But I've never used the beneficiary's savings on the I-134. And I don't believe that you're able to do that. Okay. All right, guys, wrapping it up. People are falling off. It's a beautiful day here in Virginia Beach. And I hope that I've been helpful. I think that you can do like a thumbs up or thumbs down, or I would love feedback. And I appreciate you guys for being here and being part of this first ever webinar. Thank you. I appreciate it. You could kick. Well, let me ask you this way. So yeah, that's I'm not going to ask any questions. You should kick your butt for not filing before the 2-year limit. All right, guys, if there are no more questions, well, I mean, if you have it, I'm going to just hang out for another 5, just in case there are other questions. I'm trying to think of let me bring something up about, when I talked about begin with the end in mind. If your fiance has lived anywhere other than his or her own country, then he or she's going to have to get police certificates for that fiancé visa interview. So sometimes a police certificate is really hard to get out of places, like Bahrain, and it can take some time. So that's something to think about and be prepared for if that situation comes up. Police certificate, yes. So fiancé has to bring the police certificate to the fiancé visa interview. And if she's, I think Thailand, right? If she's from Thailand and she's only lived in Thailand, then she should be fine in getting it. It should not be a problem. Yes. And the question that we have here, does the police certificate also apply to marriage visa application? And the answer is yes. Oh, wait, no. I'm sorry. You're doing adjustment of status, right? Yeah, no. San, sorry about that. Question, does the police certificate apply to marriage visa application? We're doing adjustment of status, I believe, for your case, San, and no, you do not have to get a police certificate. So a visa application, marriage visa application, when you say that, I think about you're married and the person, your wife, spouse is abroad and she's immigrating, but I don't think that's what you mean because we talked about adjustment of status already. Oh, okay. So, question, if we had planned the wedding for September 2020, that would be a year and 4 months from now. If the processing time is 6 to 8 months and then 3 to 4 weeks, do you still think we may have an issue? 2-year filing comment was not for you, Catherine. All right, so that should be plenty of time. The question is 2020 is over a year from now. That should be okay. I'm sorry, did I say that your wedding was in 2019? Oh, okay. I am so sorry. I misread that. I did. I'm really sorry. I thought you meant 2019. Yeah, that would be good. That would be a good time. You'd be fine. So now you have a situation. I thought it was 4 months from now. All right. Sorry about that. You're good to go. See, I scared you for a minute. The question here now is whether if a wedding is in September 2020, now when do you file? So sorry. I've 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 hurt you more than I've helped you. Okay. So now we've got some time to play with here, and you've got some wiggle room with regard to filing the fiancé visa. But I wouldn't wait too long to file it, just because you can kind of stretch certain parts of the fiancé visa out. I mean, you don't have to go immediately to your interview, but it is taking. Let me just. I think I wrote down it's taking 6 to 8. The last that I checked, it's taking about 6 to 8 months right now for the fiancé visa. So it's you're gonna have to figure out, and I can help you offline with that. Just shoot me an email. So Matthew asked, but then they would have to get married within the 90 days. Yeah, if you actually got issued the visa and then came into the United States right after that visa was issued, then yes, you would have to get married within 90 days, and then this wouldn't work, this wedding, September 2020 wedding. So that's why the timing of it has to be correct, as far as, plenty of time to file and get it approved. But during that process, it can be stretched out a little bit, as well as, waiting even after that visa has been issued to come to the US. All right. I'm so sorry that I scared Catherine, who thought that she was not going to be able to do this fiancé visa process, because for some reason, 2020, I guess it was is it September 19th, 2020? Okay, we're all going to go to her wedding because now we know what it is. All right, guys, I am going to over and out. I've been in this monkey lawyer suit since 7 o'clock this morning, so I'm ready to hop on out of it. But I am super stoked y'all made it to the first ever Radlands webinar, and I hope you learned a lot. I had a lot of fun doing it, even though I was totally nervous all day today about doing this, but good times. And again, if you want my list, here's my email. Shoot me an email. Just put your webinar in the subject. I will shoot that right over to you. I don't know if I'm going to shoot it right over to you. Tomorrow's a pretty hectic day, but I'm definitely going to get it to you before the weekend. All right? All right, guys, I had fun. I feel like we're friends. Take care, guys. Good night.